Hey, so my name is Paul Catalanato, and this is my friend Hamp Overton. And today is the inaugural, the 100 best shorts to stream before you're decapitated, in which we're going to try to find out what are the 100 best horror shorts to stream before you're murdered, killed, or possessed by some ghoul. The goal here is as short films have evolved over the last decade to 15 years, short films are everywhere now. And I think they're worth being looked at on a level where we're looking at them in the same reverence that we do feature films. So today we're talking about Lights Out, directed by David F. Sandberg, who went on to do a feature-length version of this movie, Shazam and Annabelle Creation. You can find this short at his YouTube page, which is called Pony Smasher. Lights Out was a 2015 nominee for an iHorror Award. According to the IMDb synopsis, when you are all alone in a small dark room, what do you fear the most? Is it temporary blindness, or is it the uneasy feeling that someone, or rather something, is observing your every move? What do you think, Hamp?
I think he is hits all those tropes and even more. The He does a lot of horror film tropes, which you see has a person who is alone in a house by themselves, and then they have it's a woman, which is usually a more vulnerable character, and then it's nighttime, and at nighttime you can hide in the shadows. Things hide in the shadows, right? And so things are always scarier at night. They're always scarier when you're alone. And then of course she's getting ready for bed, so she's in her pajamas, so it's not like she can jump out the window and run away very easily, because it's like, oh, I'm just in my pajamas. So you have lots of things going on here that follow a lot of the horror film aspects. And then what goes in further here is he makes it nice and concise, and shortens the whole thing up.
I think it's worth mentioning that this short film really launched a career. Like there's this short, then he has his feature length movie Lights Out, and that springboards into a bunch of other things. That's one of the reasons why I think this short is important.
Yeah, this is the film that did launch his career because literally he was invited to go out and make this film into a feature film by a production company. And but it's important also to note that this was not his first film. He made many shorts before this. He also has a background in visual effects, and he applied those visual effects in this short also. And so it wasn't as though he, got out his cell phone or his parents' video camera and decided to make this film. He had been working in the industry for probably a good 10 years and also making various shorts, etc. His niche seems to be at this point in his life, horror films, which is what he, got his launching pad for. But obviously he's varied from that since he had his film career in Hollywood. But so anyway, yeah. So it's not just I don't want to give the illusion that he was just makes one film then goes out there and does it. No, this was a culmination of years of hard work and getting skilled and getting talented.
Yeah, I noticed that. And one of the great things about his website too that I like that he sometimes goes behind the scenes and shows you how to do it. He includes you and he even shows you how some of the things that he did on his short films work in his feature length movies.
That's probably what I know. Both you and I are educators, and that's probably what we enjoy about it. It's like he doesn't just make a film, but he'll go back and say, "This is how I made this film." And what's nice about his from this period of time, I mean, he's still making shorts, but from this period of time is that he made shorts that I don't want to say anyone could make because obviously he had certain skills with After Effects and things like that. But he made it with one person, his wife, and it was shot in his house with a basic video camera. So that part of it was minimal at best. And so it's really just the execution that allowed this to be successful rather than he didn't have a big budget. He didn't have a big celebrity in it. He didn't have special effects, all that kind of stuff. So all the stuff that could be a barrier for an entry level into making horror shorts, he didn't have any of that, and yet he still made a successful one because he recognized what it was about these horror shorts that he could do, and he stuck with that.
I agree. You want to break it down? You want to go into it a little bit? I know I have
Sure.
a bunch of thoughts on this movie, but I know one of the things that you're really passionate about is cinematography. You want to start there, and maybe we can work our way to story and some other things.
Sure, I guess we can look at that. Uh, the best thing about cinematography, especially on lower budget films, is that it doesn't give away the budget of a movie. Does that make sense? It's not a hindrance. Let's put it that way. Most There's an adage that when you have a certain role on a film, you don't want to call attention to yourself. Okay. So if you're the cinematographer and someone watches a movie and says, the first thing they say is, that film was just beautiful. It was lit so amazing. Well, the film hasn't succeeded. What you want someone to come out is to come out and say that film was fantastic. Okay, if they're focusing on, it could be the musical score, which could be great. Okay, but if that's the first thing they focus on, then the movie itself has probably not succeeded because you weren't watching the movie, you were paying attention to the musical score, or maybe you love the costumes and the costumes were amazing. Okay, but what about the movie itself? So I think that's what's good about this is that the I don't want to say the cinematographer was bad. It certainly wasn't. But it was functional is the thing. It was great and it supported the story and it enhanced the story without detracting from the story. Yeah, when you think about the I'm just gonna call it the monster or the creature in the hallway, um, they're hidden in the shadows. And that's tricky if you try and do that sort of thing. You got to put a light behind your subject so that they stand out against something, the silhouette, and make sure that there's no light, from the camera's perspective. So that silhouettes it out there, and then we can see that. And you're working with a light switch, all that kind of stuff. Um, so that can get kind of tricky, but I think he did a great job in doing that. I mean, what hallway light switch doesn't light up the hallway? If you think about it, the light switch only lit up the end of the hallway. And if you have a light switch, you probably want to light up the hallway itself. So when you're filming these things, um, you have to remember what your goal is, and realism is rarely your goal. Okay. And that might sound counterintuitive because you don't want it to look fake, but at the same time you want it to look real, but you have to cheat realism because um realistically is scarier by putting the light on in a certain position. Does that make sense?
No, I totally understand what you're saying. From my understanding, though, this effect with the woman or monster in the hallway is an after effect too.
Well, he
Like,
probably added the body, correct? Is that what you're saying?
well, no, I think what he did was the main character isn't there when the light's off, and then she's keyed in. If you look at it, you can
Oh,
kind
sure, of course.
of
Right, right. It's at it when the lights are turned off, but it's a static shot. So
hmm
it could just be, I think his wife plays the monster at the far end also. It's just the one actor, right? She plays all the roles. And so so if you have a static camera shot, you shoot all your lights on aspects of it, and then you obviously you put your monster in there, and then you shoot that with the lights out, and then you just cut between those two shots, pretending that the light has been turned out. But yeah, again, I want to stress the importance of putting the light at the end of the hallway so that you have a silhouette stand out. And it's kind of a creepy looking silhouette, right? It's not standing upright. It's got long arms, all that kind of stuff. And looks like it's unclothed. And actually, we do see that when it comes a little bit closer to her, that it's nude too. And it's like, there's a naked person in my in my house.
what I like about it is that it's the way the silhouette works is it's almost like a trick of the eye. He does a
Mhm.
really good job. It's not like there's obvious a person there. I mean, we can see that it's a person, but at a first glance, is like, is my eyes playing tricks on me? Is the kind of
Well,
deal.
that's the thing. It's probably something we've all experienced. And that's what he's so good at honing in on are those things that, we can all identify with. His other films do similar things. You turn the light off, you're like, did I miss seeing something there? Or you see something out of the corner of your eye, that type of thing.
Exactly. I think that's what works, and I agree with you. I think that's what works the best. But some of the other things I've thought about while watching this, just beyond cinematography, the editing is on point too. And the story structure is on point. Their reactions is something else that I've noticed every time that I've watched this, or I've had different thoughts about her reaction every time that I've watched this. One of the things I wonder in why this is so effective is because she almost does what a child would do, if that makes sense. She pulls the cover over her head, she's hiding with the light right next to her. It almost seems childlike to me in her reaction to this monster. And what I mean by that is like, is it very realistic that, okay, I saw something, I know there's a monster in the hallway, well, I'm going to take the light up. Would an adult do that? I don't
No,
know
an
if I
adult wouldn't do that. An
Yeah, I
adult
don't
would
know if I
call.
necessarily would agree that an adult would do that. It seems very like a childlike thing. And even the big scare when she's in her bed and we hear it running up the hallway, her reaction's almost childlike. To the benefit of the short, I think, too. I
Of
also think
course.
to the audience. To the
Well, an
audience.
audience and the
Yeah.
filmmaker have an agreement at this point. This is the world that she's in. She decides to take the light switch rather than getting on a telephone and calling someone, or actually just leaving, you know. But I think what he does a great job about is that, I mean, yes, we see the rear end at the when it's further down the hallway, it was still, that's why she turns the light switch on like 3 or 4 times. Am I seeing this? Am I not seeing this? Am I seeing this? Am I not seeing this? And then she sees it again. And I think because he's established that she has doubted herself a couple of times already, you kind of go, okay, I can see where she's still like, this is all in my head. I'm just going to take this light switch. So he does a good job in establishing, to a certain degree, her behavior. It makes sense. I'm sure we've all seen movies where people behave stupidly, and you're like, "Oh God, why are they doing this? It makes no sense." We know they're getting, we know the bad guys down there, we know the monsters there, we know it's going to happen. Um, but in this one, there's two factors. One is I think he does follow a fairly logical pattern. But two, when a short is this short, 2.5 minutes long, you don't have enough time to question it, you know? It just moves so fast. You just and it comes really quickly at you. You're just hanging on for the ride, if that makes sense, rather than pausing and going, wait a minute.
I have to say though, I have a complete backstory to have after watching this a couple of times, for her to result to go right to the tape onto the light switch. I have to believe this is a common occurrence at this point. Like, okay, this is the monster that lives here. There's a lot of ghosts that live here. I just gotta tape it up or something to that effect.
That's their solution to nighttime problems.
Well, that's how I sleep at night. I tape the light up so that nothing can happen to me. It's normal behavior by everyone.
I think it might be maybe targeted to a little bit younger audience also, with the hiding under the blankets, that type of thing, you know.
I
And
agree. And
because
that's what I was saying. And that was the last time I viewed this, which means just right before we recorded, I noticed that. I don't think I've ever appreciated that before. I watched it this very last time. I was like, this was made in mind with a younger audience, and that's why she's acting almost childlike.
yeah, because you have the younger audience things where did I see that? But that could be an adult thing. Okay, the solution is to take the switch, and then she hides under the sheets. What? That's not going to save you from from anything by hiding under the sheets. And then they have the great trope where she's has to plug the plug back in, right? And of course, we all know that monsters hide under the bed, and she has to bravely reach down and plug the plug in to hopefully, start the light back up, which works, which is great. And but yeah, everything she does are not legitimate solutions to her situation here.
Well, also too, one of the things is she's sitting on a bed or she's lying on a bed, but the director didn't use the under the bed shot, which you would think he would have, but it doesn't. But that doesn't happen in this short. You know what I mean? Like when you reach to the floor and
The camera's under the bed type thing.
yeah, the bed and the camera's right underneath the bed, so you get the feeling that something's watching you from under the bed.
Right, right.
You
That's
know, he
true.
does. Yeah, he didn't do that shot.
Mm-hmm.
But he does go under the covers with her.
Right.
The other thing I think too, Hamp, I would be remiss in not mentioning that I think really sells this short is it's not that it's just scary, but it's you get you set up, which he does with the rule of three. You know, he sets it up that something scary's in the house. He puts the solution, tapes the light switch up. She goes into the next room, she hops in bed. We get to that monster running down the hallway, which is probably the best scare, which is before we even see it. You
The
know,
footsteps. Yeah.
yeah, the footsteps, which I think is the best moment in the entire short. I think most people can kind of identify with that feeling, like, not seeing something and hearing it running toward you. I think that's a universal thing that would tense you up. But I think what really sells this short is what comes right after. It's where she the plugs the light back in, and we hear the door kind of creak back open, and it goes back up the hallway. And we get that feeling that she's safe. It has like that false ending.
Hmm.
And I really think the fact that we have a false ending in a 2.5 minute short is really what puts this particular movie in a different level.
He kind of does that. He has a pattern again, having watched his other shorts. He does have a pattern where he'll do that in other ones also, where and it's right before what we call, I guess we call the last act, right? Where oh, but I guess it's a false third act where we think she's succeeded at the journey here to survive the monster, and then surprise. But that's what horror films are. A lot of times they put these surprises in there, right? That's what makes it exciting. You can go all the way back to Halloween, where um, I'm sorry, not Halloween, Friday the 13th, where the monster jumps out of the lake and pulls her back in, or Carrie, where she's at the graveyard and the hand reaches out of the grave and grabs her arm. All these things you think is over with, and then it comes back at you at the last minute, the last second, last scene of the movie.
Like Poltergeist. I think Poltergeist might be one of the best examples of that false third act, where they save the little girl and then all of a sudden the big scare is at the end.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that's probably my favorite example of that. What else did you notice? Did you notice anything about the editing? Anything that you really appreciated about the editing?
Well, he keeps it tight, he doesn't have any slop in there. There's no and this comes from someone that's made a few films. I'm talking about the director here. Uh you can fall in love with a shot, and sometimes these things get too long, but he's spot on. So he's a great editor. And I know when he started making his feature films, he did a lot of the post work also. I don't know if he edited them, but I know that he was involved in the post. And so he's got great timing, and he keeps things moving forward at a nice speed. So there's no, again, it's only 2.5 minutes long. And, you know, sometimes people go, that's not enough time to make a movie. And then you look at something like this, and he has a very specific goal. He wants to scare people. Okay. He wants to scare them with this short. That's what he likes to do. That's the movie he likes. And he succeeds. He realizes he doesn't need more time than that. So it works very well.
I tell you, it definitely did in this one. Like I can tell you when I was in film school, I've always wanted to make them longer, longer, and longer.
Right, right. Because it's exciting making a movie, and then you get all that footage back, you get to cut it together. And the reality is that that's why they hire usually a separate editor to cut it, because the director falls in love with the shots, and you don't want to have that person making edit decisions based on emotions, as in how much time they spent making this work of art. You want someone that is completely undetached, completely detached from it, so that they can make these more strong editing decisions.
Before we move on from Lights Out, I went through some of the comments on the movie, and there's
Hmm.
years at this point, there's a decade worth of comments, but I just appreciate some of them. One of them was from an ITGGGVR. Like he said 3 weeks, and this was 3 weeks ago. And there was like, a few days ago, my English teacher put this one in class for Halloween and left the class. When the final jump scare came, everyone jumped out of their seats. It's good to know that teachers are still scaring their students. Another one, this one came just yesterday. Nothing beats seeing this at the ripe old age of 5.
Yeah.
I, I guess that's the thing about YouTube. I guess anyone can find it. And then this one came out from 2 years ago. This short film proves that it doesn't always take a huge budget, lots of fake blood or CGI effects to create suspense and fear. You
There
just
you
need
go.
a maker who understands his job and knows how to create horror in the mind of the viewer. And and I think everything you've said about this movie, and or that we've said about this movie, I think that pretty much sums it up, really. This,
Absolutely. Hmm.
yeah, I mean, it's a short movie. It gets right to the point. It's cut well. It's lit functionally. The acting's functional. I wouldn't
Hmm.
sit here and say that the acting is the best I've ever seen in a short, but it absolutely works. It works on a very primal, in a very primal way, and yeah, and I mean, I think every bit of success that came from this short is well deserved. So, in our quest for looking for of the 100 best or the 100 scariest horror films streaming, I wouldn't hesitate to put this one on the list.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. Is it the top of the list though? 100 best shorts, scary films?
No, I don't know if it's at the top of the list. I mean, I don't know. I think to me, if you're on this 100, then I don't think there's any.
That's achievement in itself, right?
Yeah,
In
I just think
particular
if
order.
you're on that list that you are one of the best. I don't know. I think it's too hard to argue whether this one's better than that one. This one does this one better than that one.
Hmm.
I just think that with the reach that this one has had, with the career that has followed this movie, with the simplicity of this movie, I think it's just hard to say that this isn't one of the top ones. I mean, I also would argue with you too that this short film probably sets the standard for a lot of these movies that follow. Short films kind of come in all kinds of ways now, right? There's the ultra low budget short where, people are trying something out. But then there is on the other end of the spectrum, like some of the shorts we're going to talk about in the future,
Hmm.
where they're very slick, where they look like mini movies, like, I mean, where the effects are
Sure.
very good, the production value is very high.
And also made by experienced filmmakers too, you know?
Exactly. So it's like that. It's from one stream to the other and everywhere in between. Whereas I think Lights Out, and I think that's also what makes Lights Out so special, is it's on the former, where it is all the way on a shoestring budget. And I think it is one of those shorts. Like, I mean, I think it is the standard of the no budget short film, taking what what you're good at, like he was good at special effects. He used that to his advantage to create a no budget short film with his wife and reaped, you know, wonderful results from it.
Hmm. Yep. Using the tools you have. That's why I try to tell my students also, think about what resources you have. You have, siblings that will be in it. How about where are you going to film? Well, do you have someone that might have an interesting location you could film in? And explore those when you start trying to decide, because your film might be written to support the resources that you have. And, like this one right here, Lights Out. Well, he knew his wife would be in it. So I don't know if she could say no, but she seems to be game for it. She's been in lots of his movies. So they probably have a shared common love of horror films. And so great. I'll write a short with, I have my place where I live. It's probably their apartment or their house that they lived. And then what cameras do I have? And then what can I do in post-production? And then, okay, these are my resources. Now let me write a story, a short film that will that can work with these resources I have.
Not exactly. You can tell that they were having fun doing this too.
Hmm.
Before I close this out, I want to read one more comment that I had to read. I came across this one too. This one was said just 4 weeks ago. Somebody wrote, "In situations like this, just scream Shazam." I just thought of it. Nobody's funnier than the internet. All right. So I think next time out, we're going to talk about pumpkin guts. You ready
Pumpkin
to
gut.
talk about pumpkin guts?
Sure. That sounds
All right.
great.
All right. So next time you see us, we'll be talking about pumpkin guts. All right. That's it for Lights Out. It's our first movie on the list of the 100 scariest shorts to stream. Do you agree or not? Like, subscribe, share, and leave us a comment. Have a movie we should cover? Let us know.